Welcome to the sixth hearing of the Committee's inquiry into the integrity, efficacy and value for money of the local small commitments allocation process. I acknowledge the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation, the traditional custodians on the lands on which we're meeting today, and I pay my respects to elders past and present and celebrate the diversity of Aboriginal peoples and their ongoing cultures and connections to the lands and waters of New South Wales. I also acknowledge and pay my respects to any Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people joining us today or watching the broadcast at home. My name is Abigail Boyd and I am chair of this committee. I ask everyone in the room to please turn their mobile phones to silent. Parliamentary privilege applies to witnesses in relation to the evidence they give today. However, it does not apply to what witnesses say outside of the hearing, and I urge witnesses to be careful about making comments to the media or to others after completing their evidence. In addition, the Legislative Council has adopted rules to provide procedural fairness for inquiry participants. I encourage committee members and witnesses to be mindful of these procedures. So I welcome the witnesses appearing before the committee today. You are scheduled to give evidence from 9:30 to 11 a.m. In the event members have no further questions, I will, of course, conclude our session early. If I could ask each of you, starting from my left, to state your name, position, title, but I note that you're not required to swear an oath or affirmation as you have both previously done so during the course of this inquiry.
Cherie Burton.
Paul.
Oh, sorry, you first.
Am I on your left?
No, sorry. If Ms Burton could just say her position, title, and then we'll come to you. No worries.
Cherie Burton. I'm the Director of the Caucus Liaison Unit in the Premier's Office.
Thank you.
And I'm Paul Mills. I'm the Senior Caucus Liaison Officer in the Premier's Office.
Thank you very much. I'd like to give you the opportunity to make a short opening statement, should you choose.
No.
All good.
Excellent. Then I will commence with questions from the opposition.
Thank you. Let's start with something quite simple, and I'll ask both of you. Are you aware of Section 13 of the Parliamentary Evidence Act 1901? And I'll just quote from it. Part 13, penalties for false evidence. If any such witnesses willfully makes any false statement, knowing the same to be false, the witness shall, whether such statements amount to perjury or not, be liable to imprisonment for a term not exceeding 5 years. Are you aware of that?
Is this how you're going to start this inquiry, by threatening the witnesses?
Well,
we have come here. We're under oath, Mr. Rath. Okay.
Well, you're aware
we
you are under oath.
Yeah, we
and
are
you have
aware,
been for the
and I don't
previous times that you've appeared
I
as well.
don't appreciate
Right,
those
order.
kind of subtle threats. Is this why I'm called back a third time to be threatened?
Ms Burton,
that's just
no,
ridiculous.
Ms Burton, you were being asked a very simple question. If
No,
you
I'm
could-
not. I was given a statement that was basically threatening to put us in jail. So
Can I just
think
check? I
that's
believe you said, are you
appropriate.
aware at the
I said,
beginning?
are you aware,
Of course we're aware.
of the parliamentary evidence?
So what are you insinuating?
I'm just asking if you were aware.
Of course we're aware, Mr. Rath.
Thank you, and you're aware
Is this
you're
going to
up-
be the
Mr.
tone
Mills
of the
aware?
inquiry today?
I think
Order.
my
Because
time-
we're happy to come here and assist the inquiry. The role of this committee is to inquire and ask for, and we're happy to support that.
Mm-hmm.
We're here to tell you everything that we know. This is my third time. This is Mr. Mills's second time. Junior staff member, second time, and the opening statement is to ask us if we're aware of the fact that we might have to go to jail.
Ms. Burton,
it is.
Ms. Burton,
That's exactly what this is about.
The way that this works, and it'll go a lot easier if we just do question, answer.
Well, I'm not.
Asking
that question is
you
just,
asking questions isn't helpful. I think if we just answer, if the answer is just yes, just say yes. I think it will go a lot easier.
And I think
Okay.
as the chair, I would ask that. I feel like that's trying to intimidate witnesses. That is.
You know, I'm sorry.
It is.
I disagree.
It
I
is.
think
It's
just a-
intimidatory.
okay.
It's. Of course, we all know why we're here, and we all are aware that we are giving evidence under oath.
Right.
So I don't think
move on.
that those sorts of
Thank you,
statements
Mr.
straight
Rath.
up.
Mr.
are
Rath
really
has
I'll move
indicated
to-
he
Sorry,
wants
can
to move on.
you direct that to both of us? So
Do you want to answer Mr. Mills?
Yeah, I'm a junior staffer. I don't know of many other junior staffers that have ever been
That
called
wasn't the
up to a
question.
committee.
Do you know about the Parliamentary Evidence Act or not?
Can I finish my answer? I'm just being honest. I'd have to prepare, as a junior staffer, anyone who's ever coming to this committee, would have to prepare pretty rigorously, knowing what they're allowed and what they're not allowed to do.
Could I just check from a procedural fairness perspective? It does sound like you have things you would like to say outside of the questions that are being put to you.
I've
You
answered the
are
question.
open to make an opening statement, and we're very happy to give you the time to do that.
We didn't realise that this was going to be the tone of the inquiry. We didn't realise that. We thought that there was additional information that you required of us, and so we're here to give that additional information.
With respect,
If we can.
That question is not out
Are
of
you,
order.
or have you
but-
ever been a member of the Communist Party?
I'm being intimidated. Like,
Okay, order. The member has
That's not a
indicated
right
that he
question.
will move on. So if we could just try and maintain a bit of
Sure.
civility at the beginning of this. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Burden, who provided you with the original list of LSCA?
I've
election
answered this question, and as far as any of that line of questioning goes, you can look back at my previous evidence that I have given, and that is my evidence, and I have nothing further to add. I have spent 3 hours in front of this committee, and I've answered almost 100 supplementary questions. To the fullest extent of my ability and my knowledge and my recollection, I've answered every question truthfully, and I've given you as much information as I can possibly give.
And your
So
truth-
I'm not going to revisit that because I have answered it.
No, well, your truthful answer to that was you
the fact-
can't remember. You
the-
still
the-
sit here today and you can't remember who gave you that
the fact
list.
that you don't like the answer,
Well, I just
it's
find it
not
odd
an
that you
issue for
can't
me.
remember.
So you can't keep calling me back and asking me the same
Burden,
questions.
Ms. Burden, you originally said, when we asked you about this previously, that the campaign
I stand
gave
by
you the
all of
list.
those answers.
What I'm asking is, do you, in the last few months since you last
No.
appeared, do you have
No,
any
I do
further
not.
information
I do
about
not have
who,
any further
who
information to
from
give
the
you.
campaign gave
I have
you
no
that
further
original
information to give you in
list?
relation to any of my previous answers.
Okay, and you stand by the fact that the original list was given to you in hard copy?
I have, yes.
Okay, so it's a hard copy list from the campaign, and you have no further recollection about
Mm-hmm. I do
who
not.
gave you
No.
that
Well,
list?
we've been, and I think there needs to be
Sure.
a bit of context there. It was, as I've said before, we were coming into government after 12 years in opposition. It was a very, very busy time. There was a lot going on. And now it's nearly 3 years ago. We have, we had a lot to do. We had a lot to do to support setting up a new government. And so it's not unusual that there are things that after nearly 3 years that, are difficult to recollect. And that's my evidence.
And when was the list that you were given, this hard copy list, when was that turned into an electronic document?
It was over the course of a few months before we submitted the final list on July 28.
Who transferred it from a written document to an electronic document? Who had responsibility for that in your office?
Well, I think there was a few people that worked on it, but probably Paul did, Mr Mills, did the main sort of data entry.
Yep. Do you recall when that was, Mr Mills?
It would have been over a period of time.
yeah, got the hard copy list and took a long time,
Yep.
a couple of months.
Couple of months, sorry.
Yeah, you've got to remember it was 600 projects over 93 seats. We had to make sure that we collected all of the contact details for all of those organisations. We had to ring through and make sure that, if there was any corrections or whatever needed to be done in order to ensure that the list that we gave was the list that the department was then going to work on.
Did you ever think to ask the person who gave you the hard copy list that it might be a little bit easier for you and your office if they'd given it to you in an Excel document?
It wasn't
Because,
it wasn't a consideration at the
Mr.
time
Mills
because
said
as
it took months
Took
to
months to enter
transfer
at a
from
busy
a
time.
hard copy into an Excel spreadsheet. Very poor use of his time, I would have thought.
we're not saying that any of this. I mean, we were coming in from opposition. We only had, prior to the election, we only had the resources of opposition. I mean, when we came into government, yeah, it was clunky. No one's saying that administratively the whole thing was perfect. I mean, we've had an Auditor General's report which has looked at it and made a few recommendations, which I believe the government has welcomed, about how we could do it better next time. No one's saying it was an absolutely perfect process. No one's saying that. What we are saying is that everyone acquitted themselves to the very best of their ability to get all of those contact details and get those lists to the department so that they could start acquitting the election commitments. And I'll say again that there was an independent process that neither myself nor Mr Mills nor any of the candidates or MPs were involved in. And during that process, there was projects that didn't go forward for a number of reasons. There was projects where the council didn't want to fulfil those commitments. and I'll draw your attention to RIDE. RIDE always stands out for me because there was a very big change. It was a commitment for $400,000 for the planning of a Korean cultural centre. And then when it went through to the council said no. And there was a bit of politics about, they were trying to say that we gave them $400,000 to build the centre, which there was a lot of discussions backwards and forwards and letters about no, it's just for planning. And then in the end, the council said, no, we don't want to do that. We're going to put it into... and so then, of course, it went to Parks and Playgrounds, which is a complete deviation from what the initial election commitment was. So I think that happens in any grants process. And when you look at... we've had some interim reports about how well this program has been received in the community and how successful it's been in the acquittal of those projects, in the sense that the organisations that have received them have actually delivered those projects. Not one complaint anywhere. So I think, while I will say that, you know, that it wasn't administratively perfect, that the overarching election committee, I'm quite proud of it. I mean, it's probably the fairest grants process that's ever gone through a government, where every seat got $400,000 for either community organisations or community groups. I just want to finish my answer.
Yes, very long answer. We've got lots of questions.
Okay,
I mean,
order.
I think it's important to note that...
we've heard all of this. We've heard all of this before.
Okay.
Point of order.
Well, you're asking
Point
the
of
same
order, Chair.
question, so I'll give
I will
same
hear the
answer.
point of order.
I understand that Mr. Roth might be a bit frustrated at Ms. Burton giving her answer, but we are, I presume, going to abide by procedural fairness and not interrupt in an inappropriate way, which
4
Mr.
minutes
Roth
is a
was
long
beginning
answer.
to do.
So
We do have an hour and a half,
okay.
I will.
Yeah,
Also.
I think
we have a lot
think,
of time.
Yes, I do agree. I think we can just deal with this one up front. There is a certain amount of give and take, and there is a certain amount of being directed by the member, and that is within your right, Mr. Rath. But if we could allow some reasonable amount of time for the witness to answer as well. I think your time is up, so that brings it to me. Ms. Burton, I don't enjoy having this entire session with you again, as much as you don't enjoy having this session again.
Right.
And the only reason, from my perspective, that you're here is because we didn't believe that we were getting full and frank answers in relation, just this particular bit in relation to this list. Now, when we had Mr. Mills appear on the 27th of June, we had a conversation about effectively typing into a spreadsheet, and I think there was concern because previously Mr. Mills had said that he'd got this in a paper format and then was talking about editing it in electronic format. And I think it seems like we've come to this quite absurd place where we just want to know where this list originated from. I think I would like to give you an opportunity, Mr. Mills, but also with the assistance of Ms. Burton. You've now told us that there was a process of typing in from a hard copy. Could you just talk us through the process from receiving it to having it produced, now that we have these two different versions, and they are really chunky, like there's a couple of hundred pages in there, so that would have taken some time.
Well, first of all, I'd like to just put on the record that they're not... they are the same document. They are iterations of the same document. Prior to July 28, anything was a working document. In the end, and as I said before in my previous answer, we're not saying it was administratively perfect. We had a situation where we were coming out of opposition. We didn't have the ability to, these guys did, to have that benefit of being in government. So when we came in, yes, things were clunky. Administratively, it does, it could have been a lot better. And I think the Auditor General made some comments in relation to that, in how we could improve the process if we were ever to go down that path again. But the overarching thing is that we contacted MPs, candidates, as these lists were being transcribed onto a document for the department. And there was checking done, contact details. Where we couldn't get them from them, we went to other places to get those contact details. And because there was so many, there was iterations, obviously, there was iterations of them, and they were constantly being worked on and populated to get to that final document on July 28. And so that's really all I can say about it. There's nothing more I can add. I've been, I understand that you're not happy with the answers, but, we've been honest and to the best of our ability. And it is true, like it was nearly 3 years ago. It's very, it was very busy. We were making lots of calls. There was lots of data to populate, particularly chasing down contact details for over 600 projects is not an easy task, and we're just a small team. So we were just all doing our best to get it right and get it into the department so that we could start acquitting those election commitments.
So do you still have this document somewhere, the Excel spreadsheet?
Which Excel spreadsheet?
Sorry, the one that was provided to us that you say is two versions of the same document. The versions that were provided to us in the call for papers, there is from Alison Morgan, there's an Excel spreadsheet, and that is what we then have attached in printout form. And then we also have another one that was provided to us separately, which also is, again, that sort of Excel spreadsheet. As you say, it looks like there's sort of two versions, like printed off at different times or emailed at different times. So do you have that original document somewhere,
Well,
that's
we've
Excel spreadsheet?
Under the call for papers, we've submitted everything we have. However, I am happy to take that on notice, and Mr. Mills and I will go back and have another look. But as I sit here now, we've submitted all the documents that we have. But as I said, I'm happy to take it on notice and just to go back and have another look.
Yeah, I'm curious as to kind of where it sits now. I mean, what sort of, because it fell in that weird sort of space between a campaign thing and a government thing, where does it sit in terms of the being able to sort of, I guess, check the bona fides of that, or, from a records management perspective,
Yeah, I'm happy to go back and have a
where
look.
does it reside?
Yep, happy to do that.
That would be very useful. Okay, so that's now been provided. And if we could just I know you have responded to this, I just want to triple check that your recollection still, Ms. Burton, is that you were handed a physical copy of this.
That's my recollection, yeah.
And that physical copy was then typed in to a spreadsheet.
A spreadsheet for the department, yep.
And can I check, Mr. Mills, that's also your...
Yep, that's my
And
recollection.
did you personally type in from the paper version into a spreadsheet? Was that your role?
I refer to what I said in my...
Well, he wouldn't have done
evidence.
all of it, but most of it. But there would have been other people working on it as well, because there was we had 600 projects, so there would have been other people in the team, obviously, making calls and putting things
But
in
in
there.
terms of that sort of original transposing process, you've got a hard copy, and then you go, right, this is not effective, we need to put this into an electronic format so we can change it. Who did the actual looking at the document and typing it in? Was that you, Mr. Mills?
I did the contact details.
Yeah.
As I said in my previous...
So
nothing
who...
I can
Okay,
add.
fine.
From
So-
memory, I can't add anything
But then who
further.
put in the original, sort of set up the spreadsheet? Who would be the author of the spreadsheet if we were to look at the metadata? I'm
happy to take that on notice. There's nothing further I can add to my previous evidence.
Okay, I guess I'm giving you the chance to clarify, because I think when we look back at the transcript, it does refer to you typing into a hard copy document, which clearly was not the case. You were typing into a document that was already set up.
But I think
I said, I'm happy to take it on notice.
He's taken on notice. He'll get back to you.
Okay. I think it's easier if we allow each of us to speak.
Like I said, I'm happy to take it on notice.
Appreciating you are
I
more
said
junior, and that's why
twice
you've
now.
arrived with someone else. Okay. All right, I will rest my questions for this round here and go to the government members.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to kind of go over some of your testimony in response to the lines of questioning. Be highly unremarkable, wouldn't it, Miss Burton, to have having been involved in several election campaigns, you've got, how many seats were there? 93?
93.
So you've got all this information flooding in from candidates. It would be highly unremarkable if there weren't some errors in the information that was solicited from candidates that then ended up in whatever form it ended up in, wouldn't it? I mean,
Well, that's correct. I mean, as we've stated, we're not saying that it was administratively perfect. It was I wasn't involved in it on the campaign end, so when it came in to us, that's what we did. We went through all of the seats and we did the checking and the contact details and prepared the lists as best as we could to give to the department. And I think it's really important to note that I think even with that not being administratively perfect, it went through an independent, rigorous probity process that was independent of us. We had no say in what projects actually went forward and got approved and paid out. We had no influence, nothing to do with it, and we had nothing to do on the approvals end either. So I can't even tell you in the end what projects got approved because it just wasn't our role. Once we finished our role, we kind of moved away from it. So it was, and I'll say again, I know that it's come under a lot of scrutiny, but to me, I was quite proud of the program because it was extremely fair. You know, if you go to an election and you've got a candidate, especially in a seat that Labor's not going to win, and the $400,000 of commitments are made, and then we win government, even though that candidate didn't win, those community organisations don't miss out. They still get what they were promised. And I think, that's unique. It's unheard of. It's the first time that's happened. And I think when you look at, there's been some interim reports come out about the program, and it's actually one of the most successful programs in relation to projects actually going forward and being acquitted. So the money's gone out and the organisations have actually delivered the program to which was committed to be funded. So it's actually quite a successful program, and there's been zero complaints out in the community. I think even if we look at, as I've said before, we've had Liberal members of Parliament heralding these commitments, taking credit for them even. So it's actually, probably electorally benefited them.
I think the member for Terrigal's one of our biggest fans.
In fact, I think he wrote us a letter, which I have here, just sort of, he was saying that he was actually saying, I seek your commitment to the funding below projects and funding programs that I have been advocating for, which our community needs. He then lists the local small commitments that were committed by the candidate, which is fine. I think that's good advocacy for him, but it just goes to...
This is actually, to your point, it's quite unusual for a government to be giving leg ups to the opposition and letting them take credits for what were essentially government promises. So it's in terms of the architecture was purposely designed to avoid the mistakes of the previous government, and by and large that's what's happened. And I think your point is that sure, there's going to be administrative clunkiness because you've got 93 candidates in the heat of a campaign putting in claims. There's going to be issues with addresses, there's going to be issues with the veracity of organisations that you guys had to tidy up, and it seems to me as though there's a desire from the opposition to project their previous rorts onto this program when it just doesn't exist. It's largely an administrative dysfunction to a degree, but by and large a successful program. Is that a fair summary of how you see it?
Yeah, that's correct. And I think the whole point of it was that I think that after we saw the opposition's record, you know, the bushfire recovery grants where we had 26 out of 27 projects going to coalition-held seats. We had almost 3/4 of the government's club grants, Category 3 fund, was awarded to projects in coalition seats. So that's 76.6 million of the 103.4 million in funding. More than 68% of Refresh and Renew grants went to government-held seats, despite only around half of the eligible areas being in government-held electorates. 96% of the 252 million Stronger Communities Fund grants went to councils in coalition-held electorates, and more than 90% of schools' renewable energy infrastructure pilot projects went to government seats. That's 23 out of 25. 9.3 million of the Regional Cultural Fund was awarded by ministers to projects that weren't recommended by the panel. So I think the community, for us, the community looked at that and was like, well, unless we're voting the right way, you know, we're not going to get any fairness or we're not going to get what we need for our communities. And I think that was the genesis of this, was to sort of demonstrate to the community, and even though it's not perfect, Mr. Woodgeek, it isn't. And as I said, the Auditor General has looked at it and given recommendations for improvement, which I understand the government has welcomed. But it's, and the pride that I take in it is that over the 93 seats, everybody, every seat, regardless of how they voted, got $400,000, and it went to community organisations, it went to sporting groups, it went to homelessness organisations. Like, some of the reporting that's coming in now about how it's assisted communities is really outstanding. Like, it's really something, in my view, to be proud of.
Well, in fact, the audit, the AG's report here, it says in the conclusion, the very first sentence, the LSC program was effectively administered by the program office from July 2023 and complies with the Act and most of the requirements of the guide. Then it goes on to say, however, you know, there were 54 assessment panel members' conflicts of interest declarations that were not identified and managed. There is also a risk that some payments do not fully reflect the legislative purpose of the funding source. But what it's basically saying is a ringing endorsement that, by and large, it was successful. This is from an independent oversight probity body. So I just wonder why you think there's such a focus on this, given it's actually a strong point for the government, I would have thought, given the success of the program. What do you think? I mean, without wanting to put you in a political position, the point I'm trying to make, I guess, is that I understand the opposition were very embarrassed by their record and now appear to be trying to find us mirroring them when exactly the opposite's happened, hasn't it?
Yes, that's correct. And I think it's very difficult. I think, you know, you've got community building partnerships and things like that where the individual MPs that are elected pick the projects, and I think it was very difficult for elected members that weren't Labor to, for some, not all, because as you know, a lot of them were very excited about the program, but I think there were probably some that felt that they should have been able to pick the projects themselves, like they do under, you know, community building partnerships. But I'll just say that these were election commitments. So
yeah, I mean, if I were a local member from the other side, I'd be just grabbing this with both hands and saying I delivered, which is what you've seen with
some did, yeah,
Crouch and others. So yeah, all right, thanks.
Yep.
You've finished? Yep.
Yep.
Thanks, Chair.
Back to the opposition.
Thank you, Chair. Mr Mills, I just wanted to pick up with you. So you had the hard copy document and you were part of the team in the office that entered it into electronic format. That's correct?
Yeah.
Okay. So that original hard copy document that you had, where's that now?
Don't know. Can't
Did you
say anything further. I don't know.
Did you keep a copy of it?
I don't know where the hard copy document is.
So did it go? It's gone missing. You don't know where it is.
He's
I didn't
answered
say
the
that.
question. He's answered the question.
Okay, so
Stop badgering.
are you aware of what your obligations are to maintain state records now that you were working for the Premier and you were in government when that was happening? You know that that is a state record document that you should still have a copy of?
That working draft?
Yeah, do you have it?
It's a working draft. I don't know where it is.
He's answered the
And
question.
I've complied with I believe I complied with my responsibilities as staff member under SO 52. You have the documents in front of you.
Right, well that document isn't in the SO 52 and it was part of the work that was done when you were in government working in the Premier's office on this program, which is what we called for in many of those calls for papers. Why wasn't it provided to the House then and where is it now? How can you not know where it is?
He's answered that question.
No, with
and we
respect,
have
Ms.
complied.
Burton, I'm asking Mr.
and we
Mills. I'm
have
not asking
complied.
you. If I
And
want to
we
ask you a
well,
question, I'll direct it to you.
I'll take the question.
No, it's not. It's not how this works. I'm asking Mr. Mills. I'm not trying to be,
He's
cute
answered the
here.
question and
It's
you
a
keep
genuine
asking the same question.
Why
He
was
said
it
he
not
doesn't know.
provided?
He's answered.
I'm not asking you with respect, Ms. Burton.
He's
Mr.
answered the
Mills, why
question.
was it not provided, given it was a document in the Premier's office post the election, captured under the recall requirements under the SO 52? Why was it not provided and where is it now?
Answer that question.
Did you destroy it?
He
I
said
don't
he
know
doesn't
where
know.
it is.
He's answered the question. Madam Chair, he's answered the question.
Look, order. It is when a question is being asked. The reason that we invited witnesses together is so that there can be some sort of solidarity there, really. But it's not so that one witness can answer the question directed to another witness. That's not how this works.
Well,
if the members of the committee want to raise a point of order in relation to it, they can. But unfortunately, Ms. Burton, it's not for you to raise.
Well, my point of
Well, I
order
can, actually.
in relation to
Thank you.
this matter, Chair, is that if witnesses are asked the same question and then continue to provide the same truthful answer, it's I think, inappropriate to keep repeating the same question with a view that eventually you might get a different answer.
So
So my point of order is, I just think the member should move on. The witness has answered, has answered it, but it's up to the member. But you can't expect by asking the same question, ultimately you might get a different answer.
So thank you.
That is what we call badgering.
I will rule on the point of order. I appreciate there is a potential to end up badgering a witness, and I'm being very aware of that. I don't think that's where
That's
we're
not my
at.
intention.
But also, if a question is asked and then the answer isn't heard because someone else is speaking over it, that makes it very hard. So if we could just maybe, if you want to ask the question again, and if we could have the answer clearly from Mr. Mills without any other interruptions, and then we can move on.
Thank you, Chair. So that document was not provided under the SO 52 and you don't know where it is now. Is that your evidence?
Don't know where it is, and I've complied with my responsibilities under SO 52.
So I think you
I
said...
have nothing further to add.
Sure. So you said it was a working draft at one point. Okay. But do you accept that that draft document was used to inform the decision, the final spreadsheet that went into the department for funding?
It was a working draft.
Yeah,
Yes.
but it was used to inform the decision or that final spreadsheet that then ended up at the department. That's correct?
It was a working draft. Yeah.
Yes. So but it was a document that was used as you started to implement the LSCA.
Yep, that
commitment
working
you
draft
made.
ended up becoming what you have in front of you,
Sure.
which I've provided.
Sure. So
under
I
SO
accept
52.
that. Yeah, no, that's fine. But under that rationale, that should have been a document that was provided to the Parliament, and under the State Records Act, that should still exist. Do you want to take on notice and check with your
That's
office
been
if
taken
anyone
on
knows
notice.
where it is? No, he didn't take it on notice.
It has.
No,
Well,
he
let's
said he
just
didn't
make it
know.
clear.
Just to be clear, I'm very happy if you want to take it on notice and see if you can find it
Sure.
anywhere in
Yep.
your office, if any of your colleagues have
We're
got
here
it.
to help. We're here to
That
help.
would,
Sure.
that would be great if you
Thanks,
could do
Sarah.
that. Do you want to do that?
Sure. Mr. Mills, have you communicated with anyone in the government relating to the LSCA program via Signal?
To take that on notice.
You can't recall ever communicating
He's
to
taken it
to
on
others?
notice.
Do you communicate inside the government via Signal in general?
We use various messaging platforms. I'd have to take that on notice.
You don't know if you use Signal.
He said he's answered it. He said he's taken it on
Yes,
notice.
but this goes to the very reliability of the witness. If you can't even remember, if you
He's
can't
taken it on
recall
notice. Well, that's
what
his answer.
messaging apps you use, you could
Point-
pull out your
that's a
phone.
point of order,
Okay,
Chair.
You could pull
order.
out
Order,
your phone
Chair.
right now and
Point
check
of
whether
order,
you've got
Chair.
Signal and whether you're
Point
using
of
it.
order. Mr. Rath.
Okay.
Can always get you back again.
Order. When I say order, we all shush. What is the point of order, please?
Point of order is that the witness gave the answer 3 or 4 times, and Mr. Rath seemed to be trying to make some grander point and wouldn't let the witness even give the same answer. If he could please treat the witnesses according to the procedural fairness rules, that would be a really good start.
Okay, so in relation to the point of order, again, what I feel like what is happening though is that we're getting interference in relation to between the question and the answer. Ms. Burton, if we could just allow Mr. Mills to answer, and then I agree, I don't think we should be asking the multiple questions over and over, but it's very hard to get a clear answer when other people are talking over it. So if you could just ask the question.
Madam Chair, I'd just like to say that, just further to this, is that I am Mr. Mills's superior in the office, and when these questions are being asked and he's answered them, that's it. I'm not going to sit here and allow a junior staff member who's been called here for the second time to be badgered in that way. That they're entitled to ask their questions. They're entitled to ask their questions, and we're here to help.
Yeah.
Right? We're here to help. We have a great deal of
respect.
respect.
Order. If I
We
could
have a
just deal
great
with
deal
this,
of
it would make
respect for
things.
the Parliament and the committees and
Yeah.
the processes, and we are here to help as best we can.
Yeah.
But I will not sit by and let a junior staff member be harassed in that way, and that is why I will have just now come in over the top.
Okay.
Not for any other reason
I understand.
than it's not fair to put him in that position.
Yes, I understand. So it's because of that dynamic and because of the junior status of
Yes.
Mr. Mills that I made the decision to call you together. We
Thank
didn't
you.
have to do
I
that.
appreciate that.
So that is why that is there. However, any points of order do need to be made by the government members. There are 3 of them there. If it would just make things a lot easier and it would take the temperature down if we could just have question and then answer, and if you could trust me to not allow the badgering, and I will absolutely hear every point of order.
Thank you. I appreciate
Go
that.
Thank you. Mr. Mills, if I could refresh your memory perhaps on your use of the Signal app. A email that's been part of the SO52 documents from the 29th of January 2024 from Ryan Park's office to yourself and Matthew Yemmer, and I'll just quote from it. You basically, the email's asking for contact details in the department, and this person's asking, could I get that department contact again? And then in brackets, it was sent over Signal to provide to the other schools if they are having the same issues.
Can I have a look at that document, please?
If you want, it's part of the SO52.
I'd like it too, please.
Sure, we can table that. So does that refresh your memory at all about your use of communicating with others about the LSCA program via Signal?
Can I look at it before
well,
I
yeah.
give my answer, please?
Sure. Well, we'll let you do that and we can come back to that in the next questioning. I'll just ask you in the time we've got left, Ms Burton. Before you were saying that with the different lists there were iterations and it was worked on and contact details were put in, and I accept that. After an election you've probably got candidates who've given, we want to give it to this club but we're not sure who the best person is. But can you explain why for some of the seats it wasn't sort of just contact details that were changed significantly between the versions of the list we had? It was entire new projects added. It was changes from all of the money going to councils to suddenly having a list of, 8 or 9 projects. And Wallandilly is the seat that I want to raise. Surely you can understand that's more than just iterations and contact details being added. Why did that happen in a seat like Wallandilly? Can you explain that?
Well, I can't speak to the individual seats because, as I said before, it was a very busy time. What I can say is that obviously as we were going through and collecting details there would have been corrections or whatever, but I'm not aware of any particular seats. I think we've talked about Sydney, but I think apart from that, and Ryde, I guess.
Yeah. So with Wallandilly, that and again, it's all in the public documents that we've got. It went from all going to local councils to most of it then going to individual projects, but you have no idea how it went from one to the other.
Well, I can't comment on Wallandilly, so I'd have to take that.
Could you take that on
I'll
notice
take
and
it on
maybe
notice.
explain to us how it went, how it was such a dramatic iteration between the original list and the source of truth list that the department's using?
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. I actually think I'll just end my questioning here, so that then there will be more opportunities later if you want to go back to the government questions.
Yeah, sure. So just on this, Sydney, Wallandilly, all that sort of business. So again, I mean, aside from administrative errors, the basic premise of the program was that if there was money left over that wasn't specifically hypothecated from a candidate, then it was to go to council for Parks and Playgrounds program, and the local member, regardless of their political persuasion, would have a say on, or be consulted at least on that, the configuration of that.
That was my understanding.
Or informed.
What the opposition is then now trying to say is that was somehow perverted, but from what I can see, we've been faithful to the original configuration. I mean, the idea that you would consult a local member regardless of their political persuasion, I would have thought was a good thing, isn't it?
Well, yeah, and I think we need to just go back to as I said, like lots of the projects changed over the course of from the election to the actual acquittal of the projects. For a whole number of reasons, they changed. Whether it was because the council didn't like that project, such as RIDE, or for whatever reason, the organisation couldn't deliver it, or there was all sorts of factors involved in probably the list now. If you looked at it of commitments that actually got acquitted, would probably look quite different to earlier iterations or the July final list. But that happens as you go through a process, as we know. But I think the most important thing here, and I think what the taxpayer got, and even in all of the interim reports, was value for money, community benefit, and every seat got the same amount of money, regardless of who they voted for. And that was our overarching commitment, was that fairness that they had sorely missed in the previous 12 years of the other government. So I think in relation to all of this, and we've explained in great detail that we're not saying that it was administratively perfect, we're not saying that there weren't, it wasn't absolutely 100% perfect, but it was put through an independent probity process. It went to parks and playgrounds, it went to sporting organisations, it went to homelessness shelters, all independently assessed that the taxpayer was getting value for money and that the community was getting a good benefit from it. And I've got interim reports here that say how successful that's been. And so, and I'll say again, the Auditor General has said, well, look, it wasn't perfect, and here are some recommendations on how you can improve it, which, as I said, I understand that the government has accepted. So, everybody did their very best to make sure that we delivered a very good, fair program that benefited the community, and it's something that I'm very proud of, and I think has been very, very successful.
And to address the opposition's sort of concerns, I guess, so the implication they're attempting to draw out is this big sort of conspiracy theory that what you did was you changed it all to target it to particular crossbench MPs to curry favour.
Exactly what happened.
But when you actually look at the final configuration, as you've pointed out, 400,000 for every electorate, regardless of political persuasion, and they, in fact, in their testimony on this committee, have not once questioned the veracity and the deservingness of the organisations. So how on earth could you be currying favour given that equity of distribution and the validity of the organisations in receipt? I don't understand, this is let's be honest, this is a political attempt to try and portray the government in a bad light because given their trauma of their previous programs. But I don't see how you could possibly make that argument given what we've heard in testimony here.
Well, I've explained in previous evidence ad nauseum that the reason that argument falls over is that we had no say in the approvals. So to even suggest that is just ridiculous, because once those lists went in, we had no involvement at all in the approvals. And as I said, projects changed. Projects fell over. Projects didn't get approved. Like, there's no way, because of that separation, that there was no way there could have been that kind of interference. So you're looking at these lists going into the department, and then we have no more further role in it, and it goes to an independent assessment panel. And so that whole argument is just preposterous. And I'd like to add, if they're trying to assert that, I mean, if we look at the coalition, I've got a thing from the Parliamentary Budget Office, where if the coalition was to win government, they just put in a 4-line document, no anything built around. They were in government, and there was no rules or nothing built around it. Just basically 298.6 million in grants to councils, non-government organisations to support local upgrades of sporting infrastructure across New South Wales, assist in delivering local projects through improving local amenities, and expand local infrastructure and tourism. So, going by those assertions by the other side, this 298 is 4 times the cost of the LSCA, with absolutely nothing built around it. Even though they were in government, it was just, we want 298 million to do whatever. And who knows what their candidates were going around promising.
Well, there was no equity of distribution.
That's right, and no equity of distribution at all. So, based on their previous record, who knows where that money would have went. So, if what they're saying is true, then what they're actually saying about themselves is they were going to pull 4 times the rort. So, this was a very fair and proper process that went through, and it's been stated by the Auditor General that it was administered with the guidelines, following the guidelines of the Grants Administration Act. There's been no criticism about how that was administered at all.
Do you think, Ms Burton, given your experience in government, both as a member, a minister, and now the role you've got in the Premier's office, that this is a bit of a notwithstanding the administrative glitches and some of the criticisms in the Auditor General, as minor as they are, this could be a template approach for future programs? I mean, we're not as a government, we're not embarrassed by this at all. In fact, we're proud of it. Yeah. Not at all.
Not at all. I think there's definitely and you can get the tone by the snigger by Miss Mitchell that this is getting quite political now.
It's a dodgy program.
And well, the only thing dodgy was the grants that you guys were running around putting in your own seats while you were in government. But this, as I've said, is a very fair. It is the most fairest program probably in the history of government. $400,000 to every seat. So, but Ms Mitchell, you've not been able to identify one program that you think is unworthy. Not one. So I'm just saying that it is fair, and I think probably that's what's upset them, is the fairness of it. So.
Well, I remember, having been a candidate myself in 2 federal elections, and I'm sure all the people in this room have the similar experience. Previous campaigns are actually built on candidates promising things for a certain electorate if you vote for me. This is almost exactly the opposite. It's you're all going to get $400,000 regardless of what you do.
Yes,
so I find the whole thing bizarre. Did you, Sarah?
No, I was just going to ask the same question about. There was no mention, just to confirm, Ms Burton, in that document that the opposition put to the Budget Office. There was no mention of how it was going to be distributed, fairness, guidelines, equity.
Zero.
Yeah. Okay.
And I find that quite odd because they were actually in government, like we're in opposition.
Yeah, so they had all the resources.
So they had all the ability and resources to be able to build something around it, but
they also had a history of a particular way of doing things.
That's right. Yeah. That's right. Exactly.
Thank you.
Okay. Back to opposition question time.
Thank you. Mr. Mills, the document you now have, does that refresh your memory at all about whether you use the Signal app to communicate with other
So
staffers?
what was the question again? Sorry.
The first question was, do you use
the last question when you provided this document, you read it out.
I was asking you, given this document, does that refresh your memory at all about whether you're using the Signal app to communicate to others about the LSCA program?
I have no recollection of engaging with the person mentioned in this document
Ever.
from that period of time.
Right.
That's your answer under oath.
Well, this is a document provided to us as part of the SO52, so I mean,
I
but you now have a
nothing to
copy,
add.
so
I'm
it
happy to
clearly
take-
exists.
So I have nothing further to add on that. I'm happy to take it on notice.
Why didn't the SO52, our request for documents, include the Signal messages that are referred to in this document?
Well, I've no recollection of interacting with this person over that period of time. Happy to take that on notice too.
So is this staffer to Ryan Park lying, or are you lying?
Point of order, Chair.
on.
Point of order,
Okay.
Chair.
All right.
Seriously.
Order.
Point of order, Chair.
Order. I'll hear the point of order.
Point of order is that Mr. Mills has answered the question, and he's answered that he has no recollection. I mean, I don't know what kind of abilities Mr. Raff has to question someone's recollection, but Mr. Mills has said he can't recollect, but is prepared to go and take something on notice, and we should accept that and respect it.
I'll
Okay.
have to
Can I
call some of
also
the
add
electorate
to
staff
the-
and see who's telling the truth.
I will hear the point of order.
Well, leaving aside the pejorative question, I mean, the facts are that if you read from the document that's been provided, it doesn't say that the information was provided by Mr. Mills.
But Mr. Primrose, as
Okay.
you well know, all documents regarding the LSCA program should have been provided to this House under SO52, regardless of whether it was a one-way or a two-way interaction. All documents regarding LSCA, including Signal messages, were required to be provided to the Legislative Council.
Now, further to that, however, can I simply say that the question
Yeah, do you want to...
being asked is in relation to Mr. Mills has been questioned about electronic traffic. But if you look at the document, it doesn't say that the document, that the so-called signal was sent by Mr. Mills.
In relation to the point of order, there needs to be enough time for clarity to be sought in relation to the answer being given, so that there's no doubt as to what the answer is. But then going beyond that does begin to come into the sort of badgering realm. So if we could just make it very clear what the question is, have a very clear answer, and then we can move on.
And Madam Chair, can I just add, under parliamentary privilege, we've had to endure being called names, and
was a
to
question.
insinuate that anyone is lying like that is just very hostile. And I'd ask that as witnesses we just be treated with respect. Mr. Mills is here to assist the committee and he's trying to answer to the best of his ability. If he takes something on notice, it's on notice and he will come back to the committee.
Okay.
To then accuse him of lying is like a whole nother realm.
Okay, can we just be clear though, a question that is trying to ascertain whether or not something is the truth is not an accusation of lying.
Well, he
if there
said-
is any accusations of lying, then absolutely I agree with you, but let's just be very careful and proceed on that basis.
Okay, I'll just finish with you with a couple more, Mr. Mills. Do you send text messages to work colleagues about work matters?
Send various messages.
Yeah, so we all use text. You must have a work phone that you text people on about work-related matters. It's not a trick question.
A work phone. I send various messages.
Yeah, sure. And would you have ever texted colleagues about the LSCA program?
Not to my recollection.
So never, not once, have you ever messaged Miss Burton to say, hey, I'm putting this stuff in the list, I'll be running a bit late to something, or anyone else, any electorate office, never ever sent a text ever about LSCA in the couple of years you've had this job?
Not to my recollection.
You're a caucus liaison officer. Your role is to liaise with the Labor caucus. Surely Labor MPs are contacting you about projects in their electorates. Do you seriously think that we believe, or, are you suggesting that on no occasion in the 3 years that you've been in the Premier's office that you've ever had any contact with any other Labor staffer or MP about the LSCA program? Is that what you're suggesting via text message or Signal or WhatsApp? Is that really your suggestion?
What's the question? Sorry.
Have you ever spoken to any of your Labor colleagues, other staffers, members of Parliament via text about LSCA?
I just refer you to my previous evidence.
Well, no, I didn't ask that. I'm asking. This is the first time I've asked you this with respect. Have you ever talked about LSCA via text, received any, sent any about LSCA?
I'd have to take that on notice.
Ms. Burton,
Yes.
moving to some of the evidence you've previously given to this inquiry, my colleague Sarah Mitchell asked you, I'll just quote from the 24th of March this year, she asked, this wasn't a grant process per se in that there were applications. You would agree that it was Labor candidates in each of those 93 seats at nominated projects? And you responded, they were election commitments, yes. And then Ms. Mitchell asked, but they were nominated from Labor candidates. And you answered, absolutely, as election commitments. Do you stand by that evidence?
Well, it was evidence that I gave, and so to the best of my ability and recollection, I stand by that statement. But I have said that projects did change. I have made that very clear, that it's not a perfect system. There were corrections, there were things that, administrative changes. However, to the best of our recollection and ability, we compiled the list based on what we believed were those commitments. So I stand by that evidence. Yes, I do.
So just on that, what did you classify an election commitment under this program to be?
I've already answered that. What was committed during the election.
So prior to election day, it all had to be in, and that had to be what the election
Well, like I've
commitment
said
was.
before, the overarching commitment was, because it wasn't perfect, like I said, and the election commitments that were made prior to the election, not all of those commitments were the ones that got funded. So it did change, but the overarching commitment was the $400,000 per seat for community organisations, sporting groups and parks and playgrounds. And that was what was acquitted.
Okay, but what was within that at
happened.
400,000 was a bit fluid. There was movement in that post-election, is what you're saying?
Well, of course. I've cited RIDE as a classic example, that the RIDE commitment was nothing like what was, in the end, was nothing like what was committed prior to the election. And that's because the council refused to fulfil that commitment. They said, we're not doing it. So, and we ran the risk of losing that $400,000, and then that wouldn't have stayed true to our overarching commitment of the $400,000 per seat. So that's why that commitment was allowed to change. I don't know, like, at the end of the day, we've talked about ad nauseum, we've talked about the fact that some commitments had to change, because we had to fundamentally stay true to the fairness of the overarching election commitment, which was that every seat to receive $400,000.
So just so I'm crystal clear, your overarching commitment, when these program guidelines talk about it has to be election commitments, from your perspective, that is that every seat gets $400,000, and what the makeup of that is, if that has changed post-election to where you were pre-election, that doesn't matter. It's that every seat gets $400,000. Is that what you?
That was the main commitment. I mean, and if you look at when it went through the probity process, I don't know exactly how many, but I know that there were some projects that weren't approved for whatever reason. I know that there were some organisations that actually couldn't deliver what was committed. I know there were some organisations, or particularly some councils, who wanted to decide what they wanted. Even they wanted to decide, they didn't like what was presented to them, and they wanted to decide what projects they put it into because they had different priorities. So So yeah, there were changes, and like I've said, Miss Mitchell, this program was not perfect. It was not administratively perfect, and it wasn't perfect.
But you also said-
But it was a fair process, and the overarching commitment, whether regardless of what happened, the overarching commitment was this $400,000 per seat, which is what was delivered. And all of those projects that went in, whether the ones that were approved in the final, after the final assessment, those ones were acquitted, and the community got value for money, and
you
the
influenced
taxpayer
what went
got
in
value
for
for money.
acquittal. Like, you can't
and
pretend you didn't have any oversight or influence on it. You
Every
did.
seat got $400,000.
They took the list
Point
and
of
they
order,
gave
Chair.
them as
Point of
gospel.
All right,
order.
order.
I think if you look at all of the
Yes.
election
Order,
material,
order.
Very clear.
I mean,
Order.
Sorry, Chair.
The Honourable Sarah Mitchell just started talking over Ms Burton as she was giving the answer to the question that she had been asked by the opposition. And again, I just ask that we, at a bare minimum, adhere to the procedural fairness resolution.
and I'll just
I
add
think
that
our time's finished anyway.
as I said at the time, I've said before in the last 2 hearings that I've been here, it was 93 seats, over 600 projects. It was a very, very busy time, and everyone did their best to put that list together and make sure that all of the contact details were correct and that it was correct and submitted to the department. So, and like I said, it wasn't a perfect process, but at the end of the day, we had a very big separation from us and what projects were finally approved. We had no say in the assessment or anything like that. So there was a very big separation, and to the, you know, for us, the overarching thing was to make sure $400,000 per seat. And I think even during the assessment process, when projects fell over or things like that, then money was changed from that project into parks and playgrounds or whoever went to councils or what have you. I think, you know, I think it is difficult when the process comes in after the commitments and those sorts of things. So, as I said, and I'll say again, while I can't talk about specific seats or things like that, what I can say is that it was a fair program, $400,000 per seat, and it went through an independent process and then was approved or not approved. So I don't
Thank you.
really, I don't think there's anything more I can add. It's been exhaustive evidence, and I just don't think there's anything more we can add in relation to this.
Thank you. Order. We'll go back to government time.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to kind of tease out this line of questioning from Mr Rath, and to a lesser degree, I guess, the Honourable Sarah Mitchell, regarding the stress on Labor candidates. Labor candidates got to choose. As if this is some sort of national revelation or conspiracy. I mean, would be bizarre, wouldn't it, if we were trying to win government and we said to Jordan Lane, mate, go and feel free to promise whatever you want. We'll use our election promises to help you get elected. I mean, I don't understand. Like, we're trying to get government, so we say to all our 93 Labor candidates, you've got 400,000, tell us what projects you need. What is strange about that? I didn't understand the question, did you?
No, I just think that any suggestion that me or my team did not do their very best to acquit their role, and that there was something, you know, nefarious going on, I just object. I just dismiss that absolutely outright. That just was never the case. It was a big job, and we acquitted it to the best of our ability. And as I said, those projects went in to a process that we had no involvement in. And the overarching election commitment was fulfilled, and that is $400,000 per seat.
And in fact, their program, which you identified before, was basically how many multiples was it again of ours?
4 times.
Four
It was 4
times.
times.
This is where it's going to, no criteria whatsoever. So their candidates would have had discretion to go around and say we can just do it all in our seats.
It could have gone to any,
Right?
Exactly.
But this particular one was no, everyone's getting 400, and here's the kicker, if the Labor candidate doesn't win, you still get it, and you actually have some say if there's residual money for parks and playgrounds.
Yeah. And I think if you look at the reception of the coalition MPs to it, you know, I mean,
Lots of photos.
they're loving it. And I mean, even through all of these hearings and all of the questions that we've been asked, no one's said that any of these organisations weren't worthy or it wasn't community benefit. I mean, as I've said before in previous evidence, it's about, in the end, where the taxpayer dollar goes, and is the taxpayer getting value for money, and was there community benefit? And the interim reports of the local small commitments allocations state that very clearly, that there was huge community benefit. Their own MPs are saying it. And so to suggest, I really don't understand, or to suggest that there was something untoward going on is just not correct. And like I said, I think the thing that I'm personally most proud of is the fairness of it. It was so fair. Like, you know, we've watched coalition MPs, you know, take the credit and all that, which fair play to them. And, you know, we're just happy their community was able to benefit from such a good program.
And if you're a constituent in one of these electorates and you're looking at this, presumably you're saying, well, this is actually good. I'm living in a Liberal electorate, let's call it Terrigal or Ryde or whatever, and Cronulla. I'm still getting my money even though their candidate lost.
Correct.
And
that's the fairness of it. Like, really, and that's why it's so unique. And I think it was to give the community comfort that this government was always going to do things based on need. And I think the local small commitments, $400,000 per seat, regardless of who you returned to the parliament, that these communities were not going to miss out. It was just really a demonstration to the community that this government was going to be different.
And Ms Burton, you've been a candidate yourself.
Yes.
What's not unique is candidates making promises in their electorate, is it?
No.
So we would have seen, I mean, I can't remember the promises of the opposition candidates in their seats, but they would have been making promises in their seats, which they would have been intending to fulfil when they got elected. But they didn't make a guarantee that if, you know, they didn't, you know, that the Labor member or the independent member would get the same amount of money. So there's nothing unique about making promises during an election.
No. And I think that's an important point to make about what kind of the uniqueness of it, which also adds to, you know, a bit of clunkiness in administering it for the first time, is that they were election commitments, not an open grants process or community building partnerships. They were very, very different. And so working out, you know, like how to administer that properly to make sure that there was proper probity and as I said, community benefit and best use of taxpayers' funds. I think that the Premier's department did an amazing job in setting that up and making sure that the community, the taxpayer, could have comfort that their taxpayer dollar was not being wasted. Yes.
And then I notice on top of this, you've got the leader of the opposition, for example, writing letters to the Premier, 12th of February 2025, 9th of May 2025, for the Cronulla Surf Festival, the Cronulla Jazz and Blues Festival, asking for money to be allocated out of the Premier's discretionary fund, which was then subsequently granted. So on top of the LSCA 400, you get the Premier doling out money to his opponent in a Liberal seat. Hardly smacks of favouritism or bias, doesn't it? And you've got other examples here too. The Women's Shelter Armidale, towards the Women's Shelter Armidale Food Project. The Manly Wheelchair Basketball Association received $500,000 towards funding host games at the NWBL 2024. I mean, any rational person looking at this objectively would say this is probably the fairest government in the history of New South Wales, I would have thought.
Yeah, well, in my experience, yes. I think that, you know, and that's, like I said, why, you know, even though the Auditor-General has recommended ways that we could do it better, which is great, because the intention was always to demonstrate to the community that this government was about fairness. And I think when you know, as I said, if you look at the interim reports of how successful this program has been and how much it's benefited communities right across the state, I think we've really achieved that objective. You know, like it's, and I think, you know, I think it was about allaying community fears that, you know, the things that were going on before in relation to, you know, some people being even proud of pork barrelling coalition seats, that this government was not going to be like that this government was going to be fair across the state and really address the needs of the state without taking the politics out, without that political bias.
Yeah, it's been a game changer. Peter?
Yes, I just, I'm reminded of the exploits of largesse from the pork barrelaro in the last government, but in relation to this program, I just again note the findings of the Auditor-General's report.
That's right.
Okay. The Auditor-General found that the Premier's Department Program Office conducted an effective process for administering the LSCA program in line with the Grants Administration Guide and the Government Sector Finance Act 2018.
Yeah.
Do you have any comment on that?
Well, and I mean, that's, I mean, it's quite, once again, it's quite remarkable because we have come in from opposition. These were election commitments, and then a process was put in place, and for the process to be as rigorous as it was and as independent as it was, to make sure that where the taxpayers' dollar went was going to give them best value for money and support communities, particularly in the current climate, to really, you know, support homelessness shelters and vulnerable people. It was even some housing, I think, was in there, and shelters and things like that. Like, I think that with the way that was set up to make sure that that was all done properly and at arm's length from politics, I thought was really.
And that's been endorsed by the Auditor-General.
And it has, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Done? Good. Back to the opposition.
Thank you. Ms Burden, you know, the evidence you gave just before was about the $400,000 per electorate was the sort of the main election commitment, not individual projects. But you said there was sort of flexibility in the projects that went on to be funded versus the commitments that were made during the election campaign. But you previously said to us that no election commitments were changed. You said that on the 24th of March this year. Is that correct?
I think that you are being selective. We were talking about Sydney at the time, and you were asking me, were the election commitments changed for Sydney? And I was telling you that it was, what was committed for Sydney was the ones that went through for funding. So you're taking my comments out of context.
Well, you said that with local small commitments allocation, I really want to drive this home, they were election commitments made during an election.
Yeah,
but they weren't all election commitments, were they? Some of them have been changed.
But you've taken me out of context again. It was the argument in relation to whether it should have been if it should have been like community building partnerships, which I kept saying that they were election commitments, so they couldn't have been. You couldn't have come in to government and then said, okay, well, forget all of that. We're going to put it out to a competitive process or whatever.
It wasn't a
it was-
competitive
it was-
process.
Never been competitive.
No, but
It's a closed,
that was what I
non-competitive
was
process.
saying in that evidence. So
Well, the guidelines, the grant guidelines for the LSCA says that they need to be election commitments.
well, they changed during the process
How can the election commitments change after the election?
because like, I've already
not
explained
election
that.
commitments.
But I've already explained that. Like
Well-
ride is always the one that sticks out. But I'm sure there were others that as they were going through the process, and I think.
Yes, it
I
defaults
think
to
the
parks
Special
and
Minister of
playgrounds.
State has
Chair, is
said
there any
in his-
chance the witness can actually
Yeah, order.
answer the question without
Yes,
being
I
interrupted
uphold the point of
constantly?
order.
I've already said many times on the record that things did change, and there was very good reasons for them, because we had to stay true to the $400,000 per seat. That is my evidence. So and I think you would have to get a list of what was actually approved, because you would see that there was changes. And I think the Special Minister of State has said many times that there were even projects that came up that were recommended not to approve for certain reasons. But we still had to stay true to the 400,000. That community, because a project might have fallen over or not been able to be delivered, why should that community then get less than 400,000? And so, yes, things did change. But like I said, as far as our involvement in the process, we did our very, very best and to acquit our role, which was to ring through and collect the data in relation to contact details and then submit those to the department.
So just on
which is
those
what we did.
projects, Ms Burton, that changed, and you use RIDE as an example, so there was a specific project that was identified, it was the Cultural Centre, I think, didn't go ahead for whatever reason, or you said there's other community groups that, couldn't take the money, then the default of what was left over in those seats to make up 400 grand should have gone to local councils. That was the process? Is that right?
But it's still a change. Like you're
No, I
saying, there was
understand
no
that, but I'm
changes,
just
and
trying
that
to be
wasn't
really
true
clear.
then to the election
But
commitment.
your point was, if the election commitment wasn't approved on the advice of the department for whatever reason, proponent wasn't able to do it, then that default was that money then went to councils. That's correct?
Well, that was my understanding.
Okay.
yeah.
So why are there examples where it's gone the other way around? And I draw you back again to Wallandilly, where the election commitment was $400,000 to councils and now approved on the LSCA website are about a dozen community
I've
groups
said
that have gotten money. Can you explain that?
Well, I've said that with my, the only real seats that stand out to me, obviously, are Sydney and Ryde, because we had some
Okay,
issues
I'm not
there.
asking about those
But-
with respect.
but
Why? Can you explain to me why it would have gone the
I'll
other
take
way?
it on notice. I'll take that one on notice.
So, but sitting here, you can't explain why.
Point of order,
Does
Chair.
anyone-
Point of
no,
order,
right.
Chair.
Order.
Point of order, Chair.
Well, I don't know if what you're saying
Order.
is true. So
Order.
I need to-
Everybody, order. I have a point of order. I need to hear it. Go ahead, Dr. Kent.
Point of order, Chair, is that Ms Burton has said she would take something on notice, as well as earlier this morning in relation directly to the Wollondilly question,
That's fine.
also said that she would take it on notice.
I've just got-
And I think
I-
once that
Order.
someone's taken something on notice, we really have to
Sure.
start being a bit respectful of the process in this place.
I uphold the point of order.
Sure. Just one more. So, under the guidelines, as you understand them, Ms Burton, is it permissible for projects to change from being allocated to council pre-election and to individual community groups post-election?
Not to my knowledge, no.
Okay.
Well, Ms Burton, just on that then, how do you explain that the list that the department has given us from June 2023, what we call the original list, differs from the July 2023 list? Let me just finish. The source of truth document. Surely we should rely on the original June 2023 list rather than
No, well,
the
you're-
July 2023 list, because there are discrepancies in over 20 seats between those two
But
documents.
we've already explained that it was a working document and that things were being updated and it was being worked on for a number of months. You're asserting that. Well, I don't even know what you're asserting, but I said that I don't know specific seats, because there was a lot going on at the time, 93 seats, we've been through all of that. So I'm happy to take it on notice and have a look, happy to assist the committee. As I said, that whatever in relation to the list, they were constantly being worked on, and contact details and things were being updated, and so I think you just have to be. I'll take it on notice.
So the original list versus the source of truth as
Well,
examples.
that's
As examples.
That's not the original.
Let me just
that's the
finish.
same
So
list.
from let's call it the June 23 list versus the July 23 list. Then I won't put any adjective to describe it, but the June 23 list versus the July 23 list. The discrepancies are seats like Sydney, which we've spoken about at length, Wallandilly, Murray, Barwon, Orange are discrepancies between that June list and the July list. Do you have any explanation why those seats in particular have changed in that intervening 1 month period?
Well, I'd have to take it on notice because I do want to make sure that I look into it. But as I said, it was a process, it was a working document, and it was being worked on in relation to checking details, checking commitments and those sorts of things. So I can't be specific, but I'm happy to take it on notice.
Did you talk to any of the members of Parliament in those seats? So Murray, Barwon, Orange, Wallandilly, we already know about Sydney, but what about those other seats?
Well, the process, all I can tell you is the process, and the process was that initially we'd get in touch with the candidate or attempt to get in touch with the candidate just to get the contact details. If they didn't know them, which was the case in Sydney, then we would contact the MP. So I can't say for certain, but I would say that if I couldn't get the details from the candidate, I may well have, but it was, nearly 3 years ago now.
So they didn't have any involvement or influence in the decision, these members of Parliament, between changing the grant allocations between the June list and the July list. They didn't have any involvement in that change.
Well, if they were contacted, I'm not even sure I contacted them. So I'm going to have to go back and have a look because, I don't even know if I can remember. But like I said, if I had have contacted them, it would have been specifically in relation to contact details and how do I get in touch with these organisations.
Have you made contact with any federal Labor MPs about the LSCA program?
I may have, if I couldn't get the detail. It was really about how do I find, because some people didn't know the exact contact person in order for the Premier's department to be able to contact them to get them to fill out the paperwork and move forward with the project. So it would have been, I made lots of phone calls, but I know, what I do recall is I had a process in my own mind about sort of trying to get in touch with the candidate first, and if not, then who else could I talk to that would possibly know how to get in touch with these organisations.
Thank you. It was reported that you and the Premier met with the registered lobbyist Maurice Yemmer on the 8th of April 2024. The meeting wasn't disclosed in the Premier's diary. Why not? And was LSCA... And just a second, let me finish. And was the LSCA program discussed at that meeting?
That would be outside the terms of
No, it's not. I'm asking about the LSCA program. Specifically, did you meet on that date? Why wasn't it disclosed? And did the LSCA program come up in conversations with Maurice?
Point of order, Chair.
All right, order. I'll hear the point of order.
With regards to disclosures, they're not Miss Burton's disclosures for a start. So that part of the question is completely out of
She
order.
works for the Premier.
Yes, but she doesn't control the Premier's disclosures. So you'll have to address that question elsewhere, Mr. Rath.
Well, if I could repeat the question before you make a ruling, Chair. It was about the meeting between the Premier and Maurice Yemmer on the 8th of April 2024. I was asking why that meeting wasn't disclosed and was the LSCA program, was Ms Burton in attendance at that meeting, and was the LSCA program discussed?
Good question.
I think it's very much...
an aspect of that which goes to...
I'm not at liberty to answer that, in the sense that whatever I do as a private citizen is my private business, and I'm not dissembling that to a committee. I'm happy to answer any questions in relation specifically to LSCA, but what I do in my private time is my private time. I'm a private citizen, so I know what you're trying to do here, and this is why you wanted to drag us back. It's not because you're really concerned about what happened in relation to local small
yes, no, we are.
commitments.
We certainly
you're
are.
not.
Yes, we are.
You're just trying to make out that
tell
there
the
was
truth,
something
it's
untoward,
easy.
because that's what you guys were up to. But I'm just saying that was very sneaky. And what I do as a private citizen, Mr. Rath, is my business. And if you really want to go there, I think that you should really check your own self, and because I've become aware of certain dealings that you've been having in relation to going after me as a member of staff. So I think you just need to. I will not answer that question.
not asking
what
about
I
you as
do.
a
What I
private
do.
citizen.
What I do as a private citizen is my business.
So that wasn't a work
Nobody
meeting.
else's.
Not a work meeting. You were there with your boss.
What
but
I
it's not
do
a work
as a
meeting.
private
Order.
citizen
Okay.
is my
Order.
business,
I think the
not
question
this
has been
committee's.
answered. Thank you. I will just ask one question before going back to the government. Ms. Burton, from my perspective, I have two issues with this program.
Yep.
The first one we can have a philosophical difference about. I personally view the idea of having a fund that only Labor candidates can allocate as being nothing like what is in the previous government's pork barrelling. I absolutely agree, but I personally view it as being anti-democratic and a slush fund. But that is not for us to debate here. The reason that we've brought you here, from my perspective, is in relation to the administration of the program. And as a lawyer and as an autistic lawyer, so you'll have to forgive me, I'm very focused on one aspect of those guidelines, and that is in relation to those pre-election commitments. So the idea that it needs to have been a pre-election commitment in the guidelines, and that is why we are so focused on working out whether the list that we've been given changed between what was actually committed to by Labor candidates during the election and what then ended up being handed out in those electorates. So having sort of frankly given you what my concern is there any information you can give me and this committee to assure us that every one of the commitments that were on the sheet that is now being used as what Mr. Raff refers to as the single source of truth were actually pre-election commitments by those candidates?
I thank you, Madam Chair, but all I can say is that throughout all of this process, the third time being here and answering almost 100 supplementary questions, is that I have given full and frank answers, and I just have nothing more to give you or nothing more to add.
Thank you. Back to the government for the final few minutes.
Thanks, Chair. I just want to drill in on that because I think, unlike the opposition, the Chair is quite objective and genuine on this. To be fair to her, and I think
I appreciate that.
But I think the thing is that this idea that, in principle, you have a pre-election commitment, and by and large, and this was your evidence earlier, I think, Ms. Burton. By and large, if you look at the final list versus the election commitments, by and large, they're mostly delivered. But obviously, due to various issues with the recipients, administrative errors, and residual funds that need to be allocated, obviously there's going to be a difference, and it would be highly unremarkable that you would consult local members over that. That's it. That's the story, isn't it?
That's correct. There's nothing more to add. I mean, at the end of the day, just to sum up, it was $400,000 per seat, and that commitment was honoured. So, and there was a separate process set up to ensure integrity in the processing of those commitments. And of course, during that process, commitments changed, and they had to. So there were projects or there were things that happened that weren't committed prior to the election for certain reasons.
It'd be inevitable to
and those
think,
reasons have been very
it'd be
widely
naive
canvassed.
to think that wouldn't happen.
That's
in a
right.
And isn't it?
But I
isn't
think
it,
sorry.
isn't it also true, Ms. Burton, we've heard about particular seats that Mr. Rath likes to list, and he likes to list them quite frequently, but isn't it also true that those changes from the specific, from the 400K to specific projects also happen in coalition seats like Kellyville and Castle Hill. So it's not as if there were just some seats that this happened, and by implication, I think the opposition is trying to suggest that it's only independent seats. There were more than that. There were more seats than just those that are listed.
Yes, yeah. I mean, it's really unfortunate. I think that they're just trying to politicise this, and possibly the committee. Possibly the committee, with this being my third appearance.
Right, we can come back and forth.
But
All right, order.
And now I'm being threatened that they're going to call me back again. And I'd like to sort of think, when does that start to become tip over from? I mean, this committee is a committee of inquiry, and I've come here for the third time, and as I said, answered those supplementary questions. Mr. Mills, a junior staff member, is here for the second time. We've answered the questions truthfully and to the best of our recollection and ability. There's just nothing more that we can add, and we're still getting threatened with being called back. So you kind of have to ask yourself, when does this sort of tip over into sort of bullying and harassment and intimidation of members of staff? And I feel like, from my experience, that we're coming to that point. And it's, to be quite frank, it's starting to become quite distressing for myself, and to have to watch my staff, my junior staff, who work very hard and very, Mr. Mills is a man of very high integrity, to have to watch this and the insinuations that have occurred, not just in this committee, but during question time and budget estimates, about myself personally, particularly, under parliamentary privilege. I think, where are the protections in relation to that? Because I just feel like there's a very big sort of power imbalance, and that we have really done our very best in the work that we've done to get those lists into the department, and the way that we've tried very, very hard, to the best of our recollection and ability, to assist this committee, because both of us are people of integrity, and we believe in what we're doing, working to help the government deliver its agenda and working to help the community. And like I said, happy to answer the questions.
Thank you.
But only to the best of our ability. That's all we can ever do.
Thank you, Ms. Burton. I think it's really important that was put on the record, so thank you for that.
We are over time, so the committee will thank you very much for making yourselves available. To the extent there were questions taken on notice or supplementary questions, the committee secretariat will be in touch.
Thank you.
But sincere thanks for assisting us with our inquiries. That concludes today's hearing.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thanks.